to The Kitchen Table, a show dedicated to helping you escape diet culture, gain trust with food, honor your body, and live a brighter life. Hello and welcome to The Kitchen Table. I'm so glad you're here. I'm your host, Elyse Brown, an anti-diet registered dietitian nutritionist. And in today's episode, we're going to unpack all about what intuitive eating actually is. At the end of this episode, you will gain clarity on what intuitive eating is, and maybe you'll have the ammunition and the information that you need to better reject diet culture, reject the dieting mentality entirely, and learn what it might mean to trust your body a little bit more, especially in conversations, deciding what, when, and how much to eat. Trusting in yourself more rather than putting your stock into diets that fail over and over again. So at the end of this episode, I hope you will have more clarity about what intuitive eating actually is and what it might mean for you to practice it in your everyday life. I just love the conversation about ditching dieting and embracing intuitive eating. And we're getting into the nitty gritties today. And if you haven't listened to the two prior episodes, these were more like episodes of my own experience transitioning to intuitive eating, first personally and secondly professionally. If you gleaned anything from those two prior episodes, I encourage you to screenshot and share this podcast, to subscribe to this podcast, and to rate this podcast as well. Anything that you could do in those three areas to share it, screenshot it, or subscribe to it. This really helps me get the message of intuitive eating out there, and it helps bring more people into the realm of intuitive eating and out of the dieting paradigm. And that's really what my purpose is here on this podcast and what I'm the message that I'm trying to convey to you through this podcast. So thank you so much for any efforts to subscribe, screenshot, or share this podcast. It's almost like the David and Goliath scenario with all of these like dieting podcasts being the Goliath and this like intuitive eating podcast being the little David. And so like help me beat Goliath by subscribing, sharing, and rating this podcast. I thank you so much for that. These episodes so far have been so fun to put together, and I just look forward to delivering so much value for you here on this show. And so without further ado, I want to get more into like what intuitive eating actually is. I'll get started by just saying, like, if you asked either of my parents right now, like what I do for a living, if you asked my grandparents, if you ask my parents or grandparents really what I do for a living, they don't really have a clue. They know that I'm a dietitian. They know that I own my own practice. They know that I'm meeting with clients. But like, if you ask them like really what my work is in intuitive eating, they have very confused answers. And as much as I've tried to like convey to them what intuitive eating is and to share like this non-restrictive approach to food is, I think that they have grown up in such an era and learned from maybe like their parents and society, of course, you know, like that food restriction and that dieting is the way. And that like, of course, we can't allow ourselves any and all permission to eat any and all foods. I think my parents think I'm crazy. And maybe some of you think I'm crazy as well, but maybe after this episode, you'll think that, gosh, it's actually not crazy. It's actually normal. It's actually the way that we're born to eat. But I just so thank you for like being open to receiving the message of intuitive eating, first of all, because I think this is the wave of the future. I think this is the way that we want the next generation to eat and to live, to be less food obsessed, less anxious about the bodies that we live in, and more embracing health, not just on a physical plane, but also mentally and emotionally too. And I know that, you know, intuitive eating, the concept of it can be a little bit confusing. I know that I even mentioned this on the prior episodes that yes, intuitive eating promotes this idea that you can allow yourself the permission to eat any and all foods whenever they're available. That's a crazy concept to reach the ears of you and the eyes of you if you're watching this on YouTube right now. And I know that that concept sounds crazy. And I think the more that we unpack this, if you stay with me through like this concept of intuitive eating, you'll see that this is like the way. This is like the truth into how we're meant to eat in our lives. And even though my parents might not understand what intuitive eating is, maybe they're not just there to receive this information yet, I believe wholeheartedly that this is the way that I want to teach Amelia, my daughter. This is the way that I feel the next generation could grow up having a healthier relationship with food and a healthier relationship with their bodies as well, so that we don't have to raise another generation having as many food and body worries, anxieties, frustrations as we do in our bodies today. If I really looked at my goal in my business and I looked not just for myself and my health and for my clients right now, that's just like, a bit of this work. If I looked at it even further into my work, I want this to really seem like this is a movement. This is a movement away from dieting and towards trusting in ourselves that impacts not only myself, my clients, those that I work with, those that I share this message with, like you here today, but I hope this also impacts like the next generation of eaters. And so this is a really profound message that I have to share with you here. And I just thank you for your openness to receiving a rather unconventional way, an unconventional approach to food and eating. And I can't wait to just like unravel this with you right here, right now, because even though it seems unconventional, it's actually the way that I believe that we're born to eat. And so right now, imagine yourself, take yourself back to a place where you were like maybe in daycare, maybe a little bit older, like the oldest that you can kind of remember. Daycare, 6, 7, 8 years old for me anyway. I go right back to Sue's house. Sue's our babysitter, and Sue always ate she made the best foods. We had things like, rice with a lot of butter. She made a lot of pancakes. She made curly noodles. That was like her specialty. And so we always loved what Sue made. And if I really look back at that time when I was babysat by Sue, I always enjoyed the food, but I always enjoyed like doing the next thing, right? Like going to jump on the trampoline with the other kids, or doing arts and crafts, or she always had us like kind of going into the next thing. And I really didn't worry about food during that time. And to me, that was a really blissful relationship with food, because I could always ask Sue if I could have a snack or a meal when I was hungry. And I often left food on the plate because I was just like wanting to do the next thing. When I was full, I moved on. What the next thing I had to do was just like exciting. I wanted to play with the other kids. And there was really no worries or anxieties about food or about my body. And it's fun for me looking back at photos from that time to like see myself when I didn't see my own body in a way that was judgmental or punishing. It's fun to like remember a time when food wasn't anxiety provoking or didn't cause me stress. And when my body didn't cause me stress either. So I encourage you to like, as you're listening to this, like jump back into maybe that time in your life, if you can remember, where food didn't stress you out, where your body didn't give you anxieties, and maybe where you just asked for food when you were hungry and you didn't think about the calories or the macros or the portion size or the food label, where the food was just the food and your body was just the body. Can you remember a time in your life where you had a relationship with food and a relationship with your body like that? Where it was all very neutral? There wasn't really a charge on food or a charge in the way that you felt about your body? If you think about that time, to me, that's a really great way of like thinking about intuitive eating, thinking about the ways that we grew up eating, really not feeling tension or anxieties toward food or the body. And if I take myself from Sue Pagel's house, kind of like crawling up as I got older in life, kind of like, especially like middle school and high school, here's where comparison sets in. Here's where, especially not for men. I mean, of course for men as well, but for me as a woman, thinking about my prior experience, really thinking about the ways that I judged myself towards other girls or with other girls, my weight as it changed through puberty. It was definitely like middle school, high school time where I can feel like I was impacted by diet culture, definitely. Especially as my body changed throughout puberty, and maybe you could relate the same in your own experience. I know many of my clients can. And so as our body changed and as comparison sets in, we're impacted by diet culture. And maybe there's a point in your life distinctly that you can remember where you were hit by diet culture. Maybe this was a comment by somebody that you love or by a friend. Maybe this was a point where you looked in the mirror and felt dissatisfied by your body for the first time. Or maybe this was a point in your life where you actually were focused now on like what you should eat or how your body looked. or how you compared to other people in your life. This is all diet culture influence that says that thinner is better. Maybe you got that message at a distinct moment in your life, or maybe it's a little bit more hazy. Maybe it was a culmination of many things at once that kind of drove that message of thinness is better, that started influencing the ways that you fed yourself, the ways that you took care of yourself, and that definitely changed your relationship perhaps with food and your body, different than how you were when you were younger. Maybe when you had a more blissful relationship with food in your body, like I did at Sue's house, right? So there were definitely moments that I can maybe describe that I did back in episode 2 where I talked about body image stuff kind of coming up in the 4th grade even, and maybe more profoundly in high school and definitely in college. But there are moments where we start questioning how we look or questioning our food choices. And at that point, we are now more vulnerable to wanting to try on a diet, to maybe putting our trust not anymore in ourselves and determining what, when, and how much to eat like we did in our younger days, but now we're trying to change our bodies to maybe be more accepted, to maybe be more attractive, perhaps. And in that moment, as we're trying to change our bodies, of course, food becomes a situation that could be manipulated as well to manipulate our bodies. And so this is where we're impacted by diet culture and we might be trying on dieting methods. This is where our relationship with food is changed. And this is where our relationship with our body is now changed as well. So I encourage you to think back in a point in your life where you had that maybe changed relationship with food in your body compared to how it was earlier. And this is where, at this moment, when we try on a diet, when we manipulate food to manipulate our body, when we do that, we give away our authority over food. Now, instead of having ourselves govern what, when, and how much to eat based on our body's cues, based on what's available, based on the accessibility to food, based on what our body is wanting and needing, not just from a fullness perspective, but also from like a pleasurable perspective with food. When we surrender to a diet to change our body, we surrender all of that authority over as well. Now we're putting that trust that we once had in ourselves into the diet to help us determine what, when, and how much to eat. So think back to a time, maybe that first diet that you've tried or first way of eating that you tried that changed the way, that changed your trust from yourself into the diet. What was that like for you? What was that experience like for you? And a bigger question is, did that diet work? For 95% of people that try on a diet, it fails. If you ever tried on a diet and it failed, it wasn't you that failed at that diet. It was that diet that failed you. If you don't remember anything else from this podcast, remember that. I got that line from the book Intuitive Eating by Evelyn, Tribole, and Elyse Resch. It wasn't you that failed the diet. You were not a failure to that diet. Even if it was the first diet that you tried, you didn't fail that diet. That diet failed to meet your needs physically, mentally, and emotionally. As that diet tried to tell you that it knew how much you should eat, when you should eat it, and what you should eat. The diet wasn't able to provide all of that for you in a way that was sufficient enough to meet your needs. And so maybe you tried on another one, and maybe you tried on another one. And this is then the diet cycle of having that exhilarating moment of first trying on a diet. Have you ever felt that? Like you just hop on a diet and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm so ambitious. I'm getting after this. I'm going to change my weight and I'm going to change my life. Have you ever felt that way? I know I have. There's like this moment of exhilaration or like bliss of like having this direction that you thought that you wanted as this diet tells you what, when, and how much to eat. There's like a rush in that. And then all of a sudden, as time passes, this diet gets really hard, right? This diet gets really hard to maintain. It starts to like impact the ways that you cook for yourself and your family. Grocery shopping gets harder. Packing meals gets harder. It's time consuming. You're no longer satisfied with the meals. All of this dieting stuff, it starts draining your life. And all of a sudden that ambition that you once had at the start is starting to fade. And maybe even if you're seeing some weight loss and even if you're excited about that, it starts to fade. It starts to get harder to maintain this diet. And all of a sudden we start kind of listening to our body again as our body tells us that it wants something different, that it wants something maybe at a time that the diet didn't permit, or it wants a little bit more than the diet's willing to offer, or maybe a little bit less in some certain cases. And so as the body tries to tell you that this diet isn't meeting its needs, that's where this clash comes in between what the diet thinks it needs for you and what your body is trying to tell you from a biological, from a physiological perspective, what your body needs. This is the clash. The diets think it can tell you what, when, and how much to eat, and your body is telling you it has systems in place that want to help you yourself govern what, when, and how much to eat. Your body is bucking up against the diet. And your body wins every time because, gosh, it's like this rebel concept, right? The diet says, just eat these foods, and your body's like, now I want those foods even more. Right? So this is where like the cravings set in. Like this is where like food's on your mind all the time. Your body is giving you these clues. Maybe like your body's telling you it doesn't have enough energy. Maybe you're actually getting headaches or experiencing fatigue. You know, maybe you're thinking about food all the time. These are all cues from your body saying that like, oh, it's deprived. It's not getting its needs met. And then this diet's rules aren't meeting the needs of your body. And all of a sudden you're finding yourself falling off the diet and thinking that you have a failure or you've failed when really that diet failed to meet your needs. And this is where we can neutralize this relationship with food when we connect with our bodies again and ditch dieting so that we don't have to work against your body's systems, against your body's processes, when we can flow with your body and start to honor those processes because your body is built to keep you alive and to sustain you. It can tell you when you're hungry or when you're full. Your body can tell you what it actually wants. Like right now, honestly, I know exactly what I want for dinner. I actually want like a fibrous like slaw kind of salad deal. I have a blueberry muffin that I got this morning that I didn't finish, and I know that I want that for dessert. Like I know exactly like what my body wants. It can tell me what it wants, and I can honor that. That's so blissful to have that kind of like feeling that you can have what you want and you can have anything that you want. Right? The body actually, if we trust it, it can let us lead in those conversations. It can give us pleasure with food again. Our relationship with food can be fluid. It can be a fluid relationship with food rather than a forced relationship with food where this diet wants us to fit into this box and to eat only what it says, when it says, and how much of it, whatever it says. And when we trust in our bodies, when we actually strengthen that mind-body connection, and we strengthen that mind-body relationship, our body can actually help us better determine what, when, and how much to eat on its own. And that way there's no like tug of war with food anymore. It's totally neutralized. There's no like under-eating then overeating. There's no like binging and restriction. There's actually this overall feeling of having this like, oh, I'm having like this confident feeling right now, like having that confidence with food. Right? Having this confidence and having the authority over food, that's such a cool thing that I get to witness in my clients as they unravel all of the dieting rules and get back to their intuitive eater, as they unravel all of the prior diets that they've been on and all of the rules that they've been following those prior diets. After they sift through all of that and they start trusting in themselves and their bodies to govern what, when, and how much to eat, there's like this renewed confidence. And knowing, okay, I can have anything I want here. What is it the thing that I actually want? Not from a weight loss perspective that says, ooh, just eat this from the amount of calories or just eat this from the amount of grams of whatever macronutrient, but actually uncovering beneath all of that to see like, what does my body actually want out of all these things? We can actually make more informed food decisions by trusting in our bodies. And I know you might be thinking like, oh yeah, that sounds just swell, Alicia. Yeah, just quote unquote, listen to your body, right? This seems kind of like laissez-faire, woo-woo, offer yourself this unconditional permission to eat. And I encourage you, if you feel kind of like this is like an out-of-the-box way of thinking or kind of laissez-faire or something that seems like, holy cats, maybe a little bit fearful, a little bit anxiety-provoking as well, I think I'd like to invite you to exploring that a little bit more and to seeing what safety diets are providing for you right now. I understand, oh my gosh, like there's an element of safety and the control that diets provide for us, right? If diets can tell us what to eat by this meal plan or this list of eat this, not that food lists, right? There's an amount of safety of like, we're doing some good for our bodies and following these lists. You know, if we've ever wanted to lose weight in our life, diet culture has told us that if you just follow a diet, you can achieve this body. Just follow this equation of eat less and move more. Ugh, I cringe with that. No, we have to challenge that paradigm. We have to challenge the dieting paradigm. Food lists, meal plans, eat this, not that. It's not working. It's not enough. And maybe you can attest to this in your own experiences with dieting, that somewhere along the line, our body rejects those things. Our body rejects the diet. We find that it's not sustainable. And if you're able to switch your concept from your mindset from thinking that you didn't fail the diet failed you, maybe you'll be able to really see what needs weren't met of yours when you were following diets before. Maybe if you've ever tried intermittent fasting, were you ever hungry outside that eating window? Were you ever able to not honor your hunger because it was outside the eating window? Did you ever get so sick of counting carbs or weighing out your food or counting calories? Did you ever get so sick of that you felt like it was impractical in your everyday life? Or did you ever just feel like you were craving a food that was outside of the dieting plan, that it didn't allow for it? So then when you actually gave in to eating that food, you felt embarrassed. You felt guilty. You felt shame after eating food because you ate something that was not permitted by the diet, and then you felt like you were doing yourself a disservice in the process. If you've ever thought any of those things, the diet wasn't meeting your needs. The diet wasn't meeting your lifestyle. The diet didn't work for you. If you were able to give yourself the autonomy over really discerning for yourself what, when, and how much to eat, if you were able to honor your body and give it food when it was hungry and lean into the feeling of fullness, knowing that you could have a food again when you were hungry again, if you didn't have to feel like you had to deprive anymore, if you felt like you could free up some mental space. So instead of worrying about all of the food and body stuff, all the anxieties and the worries and the frustrations you have in the mind, and you were actually able to dedicate that to your work or to your relationships, what would that mean for your life? And lastly, if you could jump back to that place where you had a blissful relationship with food, right? And a place where you felt neutral maybe about your body, or you felt like you were able to respect your body a little bit more. What would that mean if you were able to live with that relationship with food in your life right now? I know it's unconventional. I know that diets want to tell you that they can help you control your weight and control your health and control your life. But over and over, I'm seeing that it's actually making us sicker. And there's some data to also suggest that it's also making us larger as well, this dieting paradigm. And as crazy as it sounds, the way out of it is to unravel all of the layers of diet culture that we've been conditioned to think for a really long time. Unraveling all of the dieting rules from prior diets and getting down to the heart of ourselves, of our truest authentic selves and our bodies that can help us determine what, when, and how much to eat if we really listen to it, if we really listen to the sensations that it brings us. And to maybe see how this impacts other areas of our life as well, in terms of honoring our bodies in different ways, maybe in the realm of movement. How would we move our body if we listened to it, right? Instead of focusing so much on the duration or the intensity, right, of movement, what if we focus more on how movement makes our body feel and what benefits movement can bring for us? And maybe in life, what if we listened to our body in life? Maybe if we felt stressed, right? In what ways could we honor our bodies in a stress state? Maybe we would decompress a little bit more, maybe a little bit differently, So this concept of intuitive eating, what brings me the most fulfillment in it is when we see that we can build trust with our bodies and honor our bodies. It helps us in ways way beyond food. This impacts other areas of our life and our confidence, the ways that we show up in the world. It brings a different glow, a different type of energy. There's a reclaiming of our life back when we uncover what's beneath all of our food and body stuff and learn how to trust in our bodies again. Diets have disconnected us from our bodies and disconnected us from our ability to attune to our bodies. Intuitive eating helps us reconnect with our bodies, build trust with our bodies. And this is where I believe that we can live a bigger, bolder, brighter life when we reconnect with our bodies, because not only can our bodies help us in the conversations about food and what, when, and how much to eat, but they can also help us in conversations about, gosh, what feels expansive or contractive in our life? What feels like, ooh, this doesn't feel right, or oh, this feels like the right thing. Expansive or contractive, I'm getting that from my Let Your Body Lead professional certification from Casey Berglund at Worthy and Well. So intuitive eating is just the first step of reconnecting with our bodies and reclaiming our lives and living more authentically, more boldly, more brightly in this world, and also living more purposefully too. And so if you can tell by this episode, if you can tell by the ways that I'm talking about intuitive eating, that I'm darn passionate about this stuff. I'm so passionate on helping others just like yourself unravel diet culture conditioning over decades of our life. I'm here to help you unravel all of the dieting rules that we've leaned in on and trusted for so long that haven't helped us be healthier or live more authentically or live better lives. I'm here to help us unravel all of that so we can get back to our own inner intuitive eater. This is how we were born to eat. This is how we were born to live without these food and body anxieties brought upon us by diet culture. And so that's what this podcast is all about, to help you escape diet culture, gain trust with food, honor your body, and live a brighter life. I mean that down to the core. It's true and it's possible. And it starts with acknowledging that diet culture and dieting is not doing us any service, and recognizing that we can sift through all of the dieting stuff to reconnect with our own inner intuitive eater to then live better, bolder, brighter lives. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. I hope that you have gained something from this episode on gaining trust with your body and letting your body help you govern what, when, and how much to eat. And two things. First, if you've learned anything from this, I hope you subscribe to this podcast. I hope you screenshot it and share it. If you'd like to tag me at aliciabrown.rdn, you can find me on Instagram. Screenshot this, share it on Instagram. I'll for sure reshare it. Thank you for helping me get the message of intuitive eating out there. And if you have any questions about intuitive eating, send me a DM on Instagram as well. You can also find me on my website, nutritionwithalicia.com. You can send me a message through there as well. So thank you for subscribing. Thank you for sharing this podcast. Let me know any questions that you have about dieting or intuitive eating, and I so look forward to seeing you on the next episode.